Welcome again. My name is Keely Keller. I'm the Director of Professional Programs at K-12 Coalition. And K-12 Coalition also is kind of the parent company of Teaching Channel. So you'll see some references today to Teaching Channel as well. So I am the creator and facilitator of Equip, which is our new teacher program. And I've worked a lot with new teachers, both in a teaching aspect, but then also as a special education coordinator as well. And I'm very excited to have Kelly and Amanda here today. Kelly, would you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am Kelly Squares. My pronouns are she, her, and I am joining you here from Pittsburgh Public Schools. So, shout out to all my Pennsylvania folks who are out there. Um, my official title is Teacher Support Liaison, and I work in the Office of Professional Learning here in Pittsburgh Public Schools. I manage and facilitate the new teacher induction program. That's my main role, but I also work on training our mentors as well. In Pittsburgh Public Schools, we have a group of teachers called instructional teacher leaders. We have several of those across the district. And we also have a training program called our ITL certification program. And I helped develop that course. And we train all of the teacher mentors through our office as well. I'm also a racial equity affiliate for our district through Courageous Conversations About Race. So I wear a lot of different hats, but the one that I'm going to be really talking about today is my work with new teachers. So thank you, Keely, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, we're very happy to have you. Amanda, would you take a moment and tell the audience about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Olszewski. I am also in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So, shout out to our Pennsylvanians. I'll give my Ohio friends a shout out too. I did see a lot of people from North Carolina. I started my teaching career in North Carolina. I taught for Charlotte Mecklenburg School District right out of college and then moved back to Pittsburgh. And this is a really special full circle moment for me because Kelly was actually my new teacher induction coordinator. I taught for Pittsburgh Public Schools for 7 years prior to being at Teaching Channel. So excited that Kelly is here. You guys are going to learn a lot of really great stuff from her. And yeah, like I said, prior to being at Teaching Channel, I was a teacher. I've been here for about 3.5 years, and I currently manage the client success team, which is a team of all former educators. And when you're a client of ours at Teaching Channel, we really walk you through the platform. We help you implement it to its fullest capabilities. We really use our education expertise and really support you, whether it's curating playlists, whether it's working directly with your new teachers to help them upload their video into the platform, all types of things. So thank you so much for joining out of your crazy busy days. Really excited to be here.
Thanks, Amanda. I love kind of the dual perspective that you bring on this as well. So we'll chat about that in a little bit. That's a perfect thing. So let's talk about our agenda today. So the first thing we're going to do is just talk about the needs of new teachers. We will also consider some research on video use and how we know it works and what works. We are going to listen to the insights of our two district representatives here. We're going to talk about some tangible implementation tips for use of video with new teachers. We're going to see three ways that success, three, I guess, ways that success you can see across the board with the use of video. So you'll see three different scenarios. And then we'll talk about lessons learned and a call to action at the end of the videos or at the end of the webinar as well. So here we go. All right, so we're going to start kind of just getting in the right frame of reference here. And so we really want you to think about what is the biggest challenge you face in supporting new teachers right now? And I would love to know, Kelly, if you have any predictions.
um, Based on my own personal experience, I think A is probably a big one. And the research shows that having mentors are really important for supporting teacher growth. But I would also think C is a big one too.
So A, B, or C, then one of those.
Mhm. A
Yeah,
or C, I would say. Yeah.
I'm going to give people a little more time to do their voting. It's hard to choose because I feel like there's so many challenges, right? All right. All right. We are going to go ahead, I think, and close the poll. So yeah, so really what we're seeing there with that poll is that we're seeing a lot of these things across the country as well. So having a consistent time and structure for mentors to work with new teachers, that's a challenge. To your point, Kelly, even training mentors or new teachers. Also balancing, right? We know new teachers are kind of drinking out of the fire hose, right? Like there's so many things going on at once. So yeah, it was very interesting to see those poll responses, and I wonder if those things that are polling a little bit lower, maybe districts are feeling really good about those things, which is awesome, or maybe there just hasn't really been a focus on those things. So if you have other insights, feel free to throw them in the chat. We would definitely want to hear what you think about our results. Awesome. Okay, so let's kind of keep that momentum rolling. We know what some of the biggest challenges are that you're facing with new teachers. So let's go on to poll 2. Which choice best represents the focus of your school or district's new teacher induction program? Select one. And Amanda, any guesses here? Any predictions?
Let's see. Was going to go with, targeted professional development sessions, but I'm also wondering, how many people are choosing the last option where our school doesn't have a formal induction program? And I think the best thing there is you are absolutely not alone, because that's exactly what we're here for. So the schools and the districts that we're working with, a lot of times, they might have a really established induction program and they're looking to add on or to add some, asynchronous components to it. But a lot of schools that we work with, they don't have anything and they're really working from the ground up and starting from scratch. So, like I said, that's why we're here. We're going to spend some time today exploring our tools and starting small. It can be really, if you're new to the position and thinking, oh my goodness, I have to start a new teacher induction program. That is not a one person job and not something that can happen in 1 year's time. So, we really like to talk about here a walk, jog, run model. So, starting nice and slow, walking away today with some resources where you can just start walking, walking slowly, checking out the video library, checking out some resources in our hub that we're going to provide for you. So I see about 13% selected that. And I just want to say again, you are absolutely not alone in that.
Thanks, Amanda, for that reminder. Another thing that's interesting, we can go ahead and close the poll, but another thing that's interesting is all the other 4 are pretty evenly. We get a little bit more with targeted professional development sessions, but it's pretty even. I mean, they're all, close to 20. So very interesting. So let's close that poll out.
Yeah. And I like what Carrie said. Yeah. Like providing that differentiation. I think we all know that teachers want choice. We don't want to sit through professional development for math if I'm an ELA teacher, but you almost have to take it a step further these days. It's really challenging to try to find PD that works for every single individual teacher that you're supporting.
True. Well, and that's one of our favorite things about videos. So
Yep.
hopefully you'll hear more about that as we go here. Okay, so we're going to start by just talking about what we know about new teachers. And I've done a little bit of research on that, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But we know that their first few years, or if you can kind of take yourself back to when you were that brand new teacher and just think about those first moments walking into the building on teacher workshop day or new teacher day, or the first even week of being a new teacher, right? There's lots of things coming at you as a new teacher, is steep learning curve, emotional highs and lows. You may be happy all day and then just have a rush of like anxiety in the evening, right? It can be a really emotional time. And so we use this visual a lot, and I bring it back every time because I think it's so telling about what new teachers kind of go through in the first year. So let's take a look at that. And Kelly, I would love for you to kind of walk us through this graphic and then how it relates to your new teachers as they go through the school year.
Sure. And I was so glad to see this graphic in this presentation. I just had a conversation with some emerging educators at the University of Pittsburgh, and I was chatting with them about the program that we have here at Pittsburgh Public Schools, and I shared this research with them because one of the things I want to say about this before just I get into how it shows up um, with teachers in the classroom is that I feel that sometimes, I know for me anyway, I felt this way because I had a really, really difficult first year. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about induction programs. But
Mm.
I think we're not transparent about this with new teachers when they start off. And I think there's this belief that as a new teacher, I'm supposed to be great from the get go. And the truth of the matter is that most of them are not. In fact, if you look at the research around new teachers, and there's a lot of work that Richard Ingersoll did, that was where I did my master's thesis. He's out of the University of Pennsylvania and talks a lot about the importance of mentorship. But we know the retention rate is not good for teachers within the first 5 years. And this is kind of why, like, teachers start out really excited. I mean, they come out of student teaching, and we know, of course, those of us that are in this work, that student teaching can't really accurately replicate what it's like to be a teacher. But they come out, they're really excited. And that's what I see. Like, I do my new teacher induction kickoff at the beginning of the year, and everybody's really excited and they look fresh faced. And then as we get into like September and October, when it really starts to hit, report cards start to become due. That's when the honeymoon period happens.
Conferences.
Yes, parent conferences. And then you start to get into that survival mode, and teachers really start to get frustrated. They start to feel overwhelmed. And that's when that disillusionment period happens,
Mm.
right? In our school district, it's right at the end of the first semester. And so that's really where we see, and what I've been seeing more recently in my role is that a lot of our newer teachers are quitting mid-year. That was something that we never had happen before. Even if teachers were frustrated, a lot of them would still stick this out, like, and get to that
Mhm. Mhm.
rejuvenation and reflection period in anticipation. And then if they felt like it wasn't for them, they'd leave. But more and more, what we're seeing, especially with the advent of so many new online work and things like that, our
Mhm.
newer generation of teachers are like, yeah, I can't handle this. And they'll walk out when they get into
Right.
that November and December time period. And we're finding schools now that are struggling with staffing, not being able
Yeah.
to be fully staffed, which creates a real problem. And so that really is what creates the need for this work, is we've got to hit them when they're in that space.
Right. Almost if we could just lift up that disillusionment just to get that just a little more level, right? So it wasn't such a harsh dip and then having to kind of work your way back up. But if we could just level up that disillusionment piece a bit. And Amanda, I think the good news is we can do that, right? If we give the right support at the right time.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback, I think it's all about being proactive and not reacting. So November hits and Kelly's like, "Oh my goodness, 4 of my teachers are on the verge of leaving." And I just think back to when I was in the classroom, everything was very focused on the curriculum. So everything I did in August was my lesson plans and curriculum. And then you start the year and you're like, "Wait, I can't even teach because I have to dibbles, 60 of my students, and there's a beginning of the year assessment, and then their iPads froze, so they have to take it again." And I just think there's so many unexpected curveballs
Mm,
that are
yeah.
thrown at teachers. And I did see a good question from Katie about like our teacher prep programs talking about this as well. And I think people are
Mm,
really starting to realize that we have to let teachers know the reality of there's so many wonderful things. Being a teacher is, the best thing I ever did, but we can't hide, the challenges that do come with it. And I think if we're preparing teachers that, hey, like Kelly, I know you do such a wonderful job of communicating. Hey, in November, these are the things that are going to come at you, but let's prioritize them. We can't get it all done in one day, but here's a priority map so we know what we have to get done. And again, like the idea of we're in this together. You're never alone, especially as a new teacher.
The idea of a priority map is brilliant. Like, I've never called it that, but I do remember my new special ed teachers being, "Can I just get 10 minutes from you so that I can prioritize my work?" So that is a real thing, like being able to sit down with new teachers and say, "Yeah, there's 15 things on your list, but this week focus on these three." And
Mhm.
that, I think, new teachers can kind of feel a little bit of sigh of relief with that, right? So we have some solutions here, some challengings. Research findings, I just kind of did a quick swath and looked at a number of different findings. And it's really all about new teachers feel like they have limited resources and support. So if we want to boost that disillusionment, I guess, drop, we want to boost that feedback and support right when that is starting to kind of fall off, right? And we can do that through mentoring and coaching and collaboration, or even a 30-second check-in at the beginning of each day with their mentor, whatever it might be. We know workload management is a challenge for all teachers. For new teachers, wow, they're figuring out so many things, right? So if we can figure out how to collaborate and just kind of keep them engaged, and maybe it is that priority mapping that helps. Keeping up with change, I mean, that's hard for all of us. I don't know, when we talk about even AI in education, how many times has that changed even in the last 6 months, right? So it's just really hard to keep up with that. And then, yeah, teacher well-being and teacher burnout, that too is a real thing. And I think the solution there is to just really celebrate teacher efforts and progress, especially the new teachers, regardless of student proficiency, right? Because progress is progress, even if you're just making tiny steps forward, and video can help new teachers do that as well. Strengthening those student-teacher bonds with SEL training and a positive culture. New teachers are not only hit with all of these things that they need to do, but they also need to feel, and they need to see their kids, right? They need to understand and deeply know their learners. So that's a lot. And then the last tricky thing that we all, as new teachers, I remember making my first phone call. I was terrified. And thank goodness somebody had handed me kind of a little mini script, right? So that is another area of challenge for new teachers. And I think if we can provide some just even templates or scripts for how they can kind of start to have those conversations, I think that's really important. Um, but I do want to talk a little bit more about research, and research specific to video. If you're looking for clear evidence that video coaching can move the needle for new teachers, this is the study. The study looked at the impact of video-based coaching on student achievement. And that is one thing when we look at professional learning, it's often very hard to measure that against impact to the student. This study was able to do that. And what they found is if you implement 5 cycles, so if each teacher in your building gets 5 cycles of video-based coaching, they're seeing improved student achievement with that. And that includes new and novice teachers. And then oddly enough, Amanda, can you talk a little bit about the second bullet here?
Yeah. So once we get past 5 and we get to, 8 coaching cycles, it's not showing the same gains. And so you sit back and you think, well, why? Shouldn't more coaching, shouldn't more collaboration mean, more gains, more growth? And I think it goes back to, quality over quantity. How many times do you sit in meetings, or I think there's a meme right now that's like, couldn't this meeting have been an email? And sometimes as educators, you're sitting in meetings and you're like, am I just meeting here to check a box, to say, hey, we did have this meeting, we did have this coaching conversation? And so I think really just kind of drilling back and thinking, like, if I'm making these 5 cycles or these 3, whatever I have, time to do, as meaningful as I can, then it takes us back to quality over the quantity of the coaching cycles that we're doing.
That's exactly right. And this study specifically talked about that it changed the type of feedback teachers were receiving as well. Instead of general, maybe positives and negatives, maybe they were getting much more specific teaching practices. So, oh, I noticed on your wait time this, or I noticed that the question that you asked was at this level of Bloom's taxonomy. Let's try to go, whatever it might be. They oftentimes would include strategies for classroom reuse. So as they're looking at the video and they're coaching through, they might be saying, oh, here's a great opportunity for this strategy. Instead of it being just so general. And then it also allows for that individualization of induction, right? It allows for you to see what are the strengths of the teacher, the new teacher, and where are the challenges, and can we use those strengths to mitigate the challenges? And how can I best support that teacher with what I'm seeing? So this is one of my favorite studies to share about. And so if we're talking about video coaching, we're going to talk a little bit about just the use of video itself in teacher induction when we get to Kelly. But we do also have a video coaching platform or framework. And so just some quick implementation tips if you are thinking about using video coaching or video coaching with new teachers. there's 5 things that are pretty important. Number one, start with a clear framework. I know Kelly in Pittsburgh uses a Danielson framework. It's really nice because you can tag your video coaching directly to the framework in that case. And there are other frameworks that we have available as well. Normalize video use early, right away when new teachers come in. And actually, it sounds like new teachers are a little bit more accepting of using video and being recorded because, they're, dare I say, younger and probably more tech savvy than some of us, right? So it's a little easier to normalize with new teachers. And if you do that right away in the beginning, and we'll talk about how to do that, that really helps people get comfortable with video. You want to embed some opportunities for self-reflection first, and we will talk about that as well. First, self-reflection and really seeing video of yourself. We always tell people watch it 3 times because the first 2 you're worried about your hair or your shirt or what that student is doing in the back. But if you really take the time and watch for instructional moments that are key, and peer feedback helps you see that too. Your peers might see something different than you see. Leverage that video for personalized coaching. This is, like I said, an opportunity to individualize for your new teacher. And then create an environment of trust. And I'm sure, Kelly, you can speak to that as far as, your work with new teachers. It is just so important that that new teachers know that the goal is always growth. This is never a gotcha or a judgment. It is really, truly like we want to help you be the best teacher you can be. And in return, the students will have the positive impacts that they need as well. So we would love to hear from you in this moment. So which of these, anything that you've heard thus far about video coaching is interesting to you, please go ahead and drop it in the chat. We'd love to hear more. But now I would really love to shift to our district spotlight. As I indicated at the beginning, we're super thrilled to have Kelly here. She does the new teacher induction at Pittsburgh Public Schools and wears a number of many other hats. But she uses teaching channel video with her new teacher inductees. And then Amanda used to work at Pittsburgh, and Kelly was Amanda's, what was she again? Your new teacher facilitator?
I always say, I think induction coordinator, facilitator, all the things.
Yeah, and so Amanda used to work in Pittsburgh. Kelly was her basically one of her mentors. Mm-hmm. And then on top of it, Amanda now works for Teaching Channel, and she goes out and about in different districts and works with them to use the video platform that we have to really individualize by district. What are their plans? What do they want to do with video and that type of thing? So I'd really love to turn it over to you all. So I'm going to kick it off with a question to you, Kelly. How did your district go about implementing video-based professional learning as part of your induction program?
All right. Thanks, Keely. So I think in starting, I'm actually going to start talking about what we do now, and then I'll go back to how we got started, because it's actually been a pretty long journey. I've been in this current role that I'm in now for over 10 years, and we were definitely not in the place when I first started that we are now. So currently in Pittsburgh Public Schools, we have a 3-year induction program. Our first year is our foundational year, and that's most of our in-person learning. We do sessions that are aligned to the Danielson framework. We also do some trainings on equity, culturally responsive pedagogy, and we do some trainings on LGBTQIA students and supporting that population. And then we also have a lot of content trainings. Obviously, we do a lot of work, content-focused sessions for teachers as they're learning to implement new curricula across the district. We also have a new teacher kickoff that happens every year at the beginning of the year. And I do a new teacher summit midway through the year in January. And then in their second and third year, that's really where the video coaching comes in. So once they get all of their in-person learning in their foundational year, year 2 is really about their implementation and application of their learning. And so a lot of that work, as Amanda has already mentioned, is asynchronous. They get access to the Teaching Channel portfolio. I saw Dr. Vega mentioned Jim Knight, and we actually utilize that work. That's the foundation of what we want them to do in year 2, where they basically identify a problem of practice. They utilize the teaching channel as a tool to support their learning around that problem of practice. And then they upload things into the teaching channel to track their growth. Year 3 is their reflection year, and they do a portfolio showcase. So they actually take some of the things that they collect in the teaching channel over the course of year 2, and they put it together into a little PowerPoint presentation, and they present to their peers their learning journey. And that happens in year 3 as part of their graduation. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what our program looks like now. But that is not where it first started. When I first started in this role over 10 years ago, and I'm a teacher, by the way, I'm not an administrator, I'm a teacher on special assignment. So I was actually in a role where I was teaching in the classroom and still facilitating this while I was teaching. And we were kind of in limbo in Pittsburgh. We didn't have someone who was in charge of the induction program. This was in like 2010, I think 2011. And I, because I had already been doing the work, someone in the Office of Professional Learning offered me this role full time to come out of the classroom and to really do this work. And so I basically put the program together, and we started with just the face-to-face sessions that you heard me talk about in year 1. Because at that time, that's really all we had the capacity to do. We didn't have things like a learning management system like Schoology, or we didn't have Microsoft Teams or anything like that we have now that allowed us to do a lot of the things that we can now do in terms of the video coaching. So we started off with just the year 1, and then that lasted for a couple of years. And then we built in a second year after that. And that was where the coaching came in. And when we first started with the second year program and the video coaching, it was really teachers recording themselves and just sort of uploading into SharePoint. And then as things, I would say post-pandemic, when we got access to more resources and more tools, we were able to do a lot more things. And that's sort of how we landed on to where we are now. And this is where the program is. I think that, to speak to some of the things that you had earlier, the idea of starting with a clear framework. So I have a program of studies that I give to teachers at the very beginning of the year. So they're very clear on what the expectations are. They know what the framework is. There's a lot of transparency there. Like I said, we already do have a mentor program in our school district. So teachers have someone working with them. And yes, the research from John Hattie's really speaks to that a lot too, the idea of microteaching. But, and so, and then finally the peer feedback and reflection, that's really important. That's one of the reasons why we do the portfolio in year 3. And I always invite my year 1 teachers or my year 2 teachers to observe the portfolio showcase so that they can see the teachers who are graduating that year and like, what can you learn from them? What can you see in what they're doing? Because I've told the teachers who graduate, I'm like, this really isn't about me scoring you or grading you because I'm your peer. This is really about you presenting to your peers what you've learned and how, your journey in induction, and then everybody else just kind of listening and sharing and kind of harvesting ideas. So
that's a great idea. I love the idea of a graduation type thing, but then also, this is how far I've come, or this is, one of the best strategies that I've learned. And then a first year teacher is potentially picking that up and using that in their classroom. Amanda, I'm curious, how does Kelly's induction program sound different from maybe when you were first starting to teach, but then maybe even started to teach in the Pittsburgh area?
Yeah, I was just trying to do some math in my head and think about the year I came to Pittsburgh Public. So I was lucky because I think I started maybe 2 or 3 years after Kelly, you kind of took over the program. So I was lucky and I did have a lot of really good supports in place. But I think one of the big things you always hear, if you're an administrator, you want your teachers to see exemplar teaching. If you are watching your teacher and you say, hey, I really want you to go down the hall and watch, Kelly's lesson on main idea and details. the concept is lovely, but we know the state of our schools right now. We have a sub shortage, we have a teacher shortage. And so that's where I felt like there were some roadblocks for me, where I knew all this excellent teaching was happening. And again, I was very lucky within my building, but also within the district. But we didn't have the means for me to leave my classroom and
Go
go
see.
observe
Yeah.
that. Exactly. And so, we would try to get creative. And like, I remember one time we set up a cell phone and kind of like FaceTime so I could see the lesson. But, that's kind of where Teaching Channel comes in now. So I think, teachers want that, like the end of seventh or eighth period. Teachers want things that they can turn around and use the next day in their classroom as well. So I always think back, I taught fifth grade ELA, and my students always had the hardest time with main idea and details. It was really hard for me to teach, and it was really hard for my students to grasp. And I just think, in the video coaching space, to be able to go into a library and type in main idea and see all of these videos pop up of all of these phenomenal main idea lessons, whether it's a full lesson or maybe it's a 2-minute clip of the graphic organizer that the students were completing. That's what I needed. That's kind of what would have closed the loop for me, was to see it in practice. We utilize YouTube, teachers pay teachers, but you want quality. You want to know that what you're watching and what you're getting is quality, and it's been vetted, and that these are exemplar teachers. So again, yeah, I think that video and just having the opportunity to see, this teaching in practice is really what would have closed the loop for me. And I actually do sometimes watch main idea videos, because it's something that was so hard for me to teach. I never mastered how to teach it effectively. And I'll go into our library sometimes and just watch short clips and be like, oh man, I should have
I know.
I should have used that Pixar video, or I should have explained it this way. So just opening up opportunities to, connect with teachers, across the country. A lot of
Yeah.
people on this call, I was just kind of looking where people are from. You might be in a rural area, and you might be the only, chemistry teacher in your community. How are you going to learn and grow if you can't ever see other chemistry teachers in practice? So I
It's
think
true.
there's so much value in, uploading a video of yourself and reflecting on your own video to improve your practice. But I think there's such value in seeing exemplar teaching
And
happening.
instructional leaders can do that work too. I
Mhm.
mean, if you were to record yourself coaching one of your new teachers and watch that back 3 times, remember,
Yep.
you'll see like, oh, I really do a good job of this, but I need to really be thinking about this, and I need to improve. So you can even do this. Those of you that are here watching today, you can do this with your own professional practice. Think about all the coaches, the athletic coaches that use video as they're coaching their players, right? They pause the video. They say, hey, look at where your hands are. If it's a hitting coach, right? Look at where your hands are. Where's your head? Where are your eyeballs? All those things. And when you have video, you can pause and you can do those things. So we're going
Mhm.
to continue on here. Thanks, Kelly and Amanda, so much for your insights. And we do have some complementary resources. Yes. So there is a professional learning activity about how to introduce video-based professional learning. I really love our K-12 Hub. There are some great examples of video in our K-12 Hub. So if you're wondering about what type of exemplar videos we have, take a look in our K-12 Hub, filter down to video, and you'll be able to see some of those exemplars yourself. We do have an implementation plan, many other resources available as well. And we do have a structured new teacher program that can be embedded into an existing induction or can serve as your whole induction process. So we will talk a little bit more about those towards the end of the webinar. Okay, so the question that kind of came up at the end of this, we know that video works and it works well. So we're going to talk about what does success look like, and I'm going to show you 3 examples here. And this is some research done by Stephanie Hoffer of the Metropolitan School District in Indiana. And what she found is when they use video coaching as a tool, new teacher retention went up. And the reason for that, really, if you kind of distill this article, it was really about new teachers started to feel like they belonged to something. They felt supported, and it increased retention. So this Edutopia article is all about that. So feel free to take a look at that when you have a moment. But just Amanda and Kelly, what do you think just about this idea in general? Why do you think video coaching would help retain new teachers?
You
So
want to
I
start, Kelly? Yeah,
Just
go
jump
ahead.
in.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Amanda.
No, it's all
Um,
you.
I agree with what just to sort of piggyback off of what you all were saying in the previous slide.
Yeah,
I think first and foremost, it really allows you to give targeted support. Um, for those of you that are using the Danielson framework, or even if you use the Marzano framework, which is very similar, the problem with that is, our new teachers are trying to grow in what, like 30 plus components of their practice, right? And many of them come to me and say, well, I'm overwhelmed. How am I supposed to be proficient in all of these different areas? And so video coaching, I think, allows you to choose, sort of like what you were talking about, like what an athletic coach do. Like, let's focus on where your hand placement is, let's focus
right.
on how you do this, or where your foot is, or how you stand when you're trying to make a 3-point shot. And you can really hone in on that one skill. And so video coaching, I think, can do that in a way that live coaching can't. And not that I'm saying that I'm advocating for not having live coaching, because I'm a huge advocate for coaching and observations and providing, in the moment feedback to teachers. But I think that they work well and they complement each other. And so if you're able to say, look, thinking back to, thinking back to the zone of proximal development, right? Like, if this is where somebody is and this is where we want them to be, what are they on the verge of doing? What are they doing really well? Like, it's the old Vygotsky, right, from way back in the day. But like, what's somebody already doing pretty well? And what's the thing that we need to do to take them to the next step? And that's where I think video coaching can really help, because it provides that modeling of okay, I know I'm doing this already. What do I need to do in order to take it to the next step?
Yeah, and I think you walked us right into what success number 2 looks like. And I know instructional leaders are going to love this, but it's purposeful dialogue. So you can have very drilled down conversations, but it's also a time savings for you. So what we're going to do, just to look at 2 different ways that you can coach, is we're going to watch a real-time coaching session. This is Feroz Munchi from LAUSD, and he is a coach, and he's going to be coaching a new teacher. So we're going to watch that, and then I'm going to explain to you what the screenshot is on the right-hand side. So if we could play that video, please.
We really talked about questioning strategies, and I saw that you had introduced the open-ended kind of answer boxes. Yeah.
Yes, for each station at the end on question 6, I added the word why, so making it more open, and I forgot to mention to the students, they don't need to fill up this blank if I'm going to be answering in the box.
Okay. Yeah.
So they have the choice to do either, and then they can always use the back of the page to continue your answers. Mm-hmm. So that's something I need to fix.
What is the fix that you're referring to?
Oh no, just mentioning that if they run out of space in the box, they can always use the back page.
Okay.
To complete the answers.
Okay.
Yeah, and the choice, like if you you have the choice on question number 6, just fill the blanks or just answer your question in the box.
Student work.
So
you didn't happen to grab any, did you, from the students?
No,
Did you happen to look at any and see responses?
Yes, I saw a couple of them. Most of them, they were struggling with putting together the information on. They answer pretty much up to question 5, which makes the connection between energy and the state of matter, how it changes, or what is the processes that happen. But then, facing again the same type of question, but with an open-ended question, like why the particles are moving, is kind of a repetitive. Mm-hmm. So I saw them struggling. It's like, well, I'm going to repeat the same. So they told me, oh, well, that is the same that is up here. So maybe rephrase, not to repeat the 2 questions, not to get the same answer, but leading them to higher thinking, from the basic to more complex as they go through the station. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
But I want to hear you say more about what you think could guide them into that higher level thinking, because that's what we want to get to, right?
So just the powerful comparison we're going to see is that conversation that Rose was having with that new teacher can also be done in an asynchronous way. And so I just really want you to think about the time saving and then how purposeful you can get with this. So this screenshot on the right side of the screen here is a video. So in the Teaching Channel platform, the new teacher would be able to upload a video. So this is the video that's been uploaded. And then what you see here are all these, you guys probably can't see them, but they're little tiny like floating heads. And so it's a point in time in the video where either the new teacher or the coach paused the video and then they wrote or commented, basically time stamping and annotating the video. And so you can see that the conversation kind of goes back and forth. And it really does allow for that timestamp moment of right in this second, you were doing this. How did that help your student better understand? Or is there something different that you could have done to help your student better understand? Those types of things. So this is just an idea that this video coaching can be done asynchronously as well. And it does allow for still that very purposeful coaching, that very purposeful deep dive. And the teachers uploaded the video, so the coach didn't have to be in the room at the time that this took place. And the great thing is it always allows for self-reflection as soon as the video is uploaded. So that's the first thing that a teacher is going to do, is start with some self-reflection to give you some jumping off points for coaching. So that's kind of that second success, is really that purposeful dialogue and time savings. Amanda, how does video open up other opportunities that live coaching sometimes can't?
Yeah, well, I love that you just said, video coaching allows the space for the teacher to reflect on their own practice first. And you can, of course, do that in person. But I think, there's some pressure there when you're a new teacher and I was so stressed. You were watching me. I don't even remember what I did good in that moment. But allowing that teacher time and space to watch it back and just sit back and say, you know what? I had some really great moments in that lesson where, if I was in my principal's office and I'm nervous, I'm probably not noticing or remembering those small moments. So I do think it all starts with allowing the teacher space to reflect and not just look for the areas that they need to improve on, but looking for those glows. What did I do really, really well? My students might not have, understood the content, but look at the dialogue going on between my students right now. And I think, yeah, it just goes back to just being able to pause, to leave those timestamps, to annotate specific moments. We keep talking about we need specific targeted feedback. I see a lot in the chat about, classroom management, and oh gosh, I think back to days where it's like, I can't teach this lesson because my kids are having a rough day. And I just think, having that moment to pause. And I think I've watched this video a couple times and thinking, the teacher can sit back and say, wow, maybe I could have grouped the students differently. Did I even know that, Tommy and Susie were sitting next to each other? So I'm going to leave a little comment for my mentor just so they know, hey, that kind of slipped. They probably shouldn't have been sitting next to each other. That wasn't a great strategy. That's something really easy that I can correct for my next lesson. We know students aren't going to learn if they're not in an appropriate, learning environment. And then I think just going back to aligning your observations to frameworks. We know how important standard aligned teaching has always been. It's even more important now as we're really looking to improve, test scores throughout the country and whatnot. So being able to tag it and to tie to that framework. I see a lot of people that will say, if you're a mentor to a new teacher, say, hey, I want you to watch this video and I really want you to call out every single time you think you displayed that domain. And then you're going to share that video with me, and I'm going to have an opportunity to have that collaborative conversation with you about those standards that we thought you did a really, really good job with. So yeah, I know I keep saying it, but I just think the flexibility, the time, when I think about like, when did I meet with my mentor during the school day? I think oftentimes I would have to like lock my door so nobody else came in. It's really hard to get that safe private space, even if you have that allotted time. So just allowing that, that flexibility to not have to be physically in the room together as well, I think we can't overlook.
Well, one more success. What is one more success of using the use of video? And this one doesn't even need to be video coaching specifically. This can just really be a way to close the coaching loop. We've already talked about really wanting to individualize that new teacher support. And so this video that I'm going to show you is really, I show it as almost like a scenario. So if you think about new teacher Vera, she is struggling with classroom management, which sounds like there are some other comments in there. And so she has recorded a video and she wants to upload that video and wants to have either her peer or her mentor take a look at it, or maybe it's an instructional coach as well. And the instructional coach watches it, or maybe it's a live evaluation as well. And so the instructional coach is in the classroom and notices this. The important piece about that whole coaching cycle is that we actually close the loop on the coaching cycle. So that's really, really important, is closing that coaching loop.
Keely, can you just elaborate, when you say closing the coaching loop?
Yeah, so when I was a new teacher, or even just a teacher in general, I remember the observations that we'd have, and the principals would come in, they would do their observation, and then have to go and sit in their office, and you hear all the positive things, all the glows, and then you would hear about the challenges, and then you maybe would schedule your next observation, right? But there really was never a time where, when my principal said to me, this seems to be a little bit of a challenge, and I would really like for you to work on this. They may have said that, but what they didn't do is provide a resource or something that I could look at or read or watch that would help me understand what they wanted me to do with my students the next day. And so I think that one thing that has been missing in coaching is like giving that next right instructional step to the new teacher. This is where you are. This is what success looks like, and this is how we're going to get you. It's almost like a scaffold, right? So in this situation, if Vera has had her classroom observed, and the principal is noticing, or the instructional leader is noticing, whoa, there were some challenges with some of the behavior of the students during the independent time, and then you're able to close that coaching loop with a video like the one that we're about to play. It allows that teacher to take a new strategy, attach it to where they are, and then also try it with their kids and apply it the very next day, and then ask for feedback again if they want to. So it's very cyclical in that way. So let's take a look at the video, building emotional literacy, and just think about Vera, whose classroom management is a bit of a challenge here this first year.
Come on in. Hello. I'm glad you're back today. Good morning. We use a strategy to help kids come in and start their day off on the right foot. We use 3 minutes of silence, which has been an important part of our school since it was founded about 10 years ago. Apart from that, we also use the Ruler program, which is an emotional literacy curriculum, essentially, and the mood meter is an important strategy or component within the Ruler program. The mood meter is a 4-part square, essentially, with 4 colors, and it helps kids think about how their body is feeling emotionally and also physically. So every single morning when students come in, they start by charting themselves on the mood meter and thinking about where their energy is. Is their energy high or low? And are their feelings positive or negative? And that puts them in a color on the mood meter. And then depending on what color they are in, they can start to think about strategies they can use to help get them into a place where they can do their best learning. I can tell from some of our energy, it seems like many of us are in the yellow today. So that means silence is going to be extra important, isn't it, Layla? Even though we have all these visitors and exciting things in our room, we still have to be our very best selves. Who has an idea for what strategy they will use to help them get themselves into the green during silence today? So Leia, what's your idea?
Closing my eyes.
So Leia's going to close her eyes. Anyone else going to close their eyes? Yeah? Does anyone else have a strategy they want to share? What are you going to do? The fingers. I was thinking about doing that one today too. So maybe you'll close your eyes like Saleya. Maybe you'll count backwards like Mignette. Maybe you'll do your fingers. So you choose for yourself. When Rainier sees that we are ready and quiet, it's going to be up to Rainier to see when we are ready for silence, and he will turn the timer for us. We start with checking in every morning. It's a nice way for me to kind of see who's maybe feeling sad or maybe someone who's feeling really grumpy and I need to keep an eye on for the start of the day. And then the 3 minutes of silence is a way for our whole school to come together and put everything at home behind us and start our day on a fresh start.
Let's all get our mood meter journals out. I want you to be using your mood meter journal to help you get your body from the yellow back into the green, getting ready for math to start. Math takes place right after our lunch recess, and we first come in and do about 5 to 10 minutes of quiet time. We use the mood meter here at the school, and so the language is getting ourselves into the green, which is a place of calmness and readiness to learn. Use what you know to move your body into the green. Take some deep breaths. If you need water, you can give me the water signal. Students come in from recess. Sometimes they're agitated, sometimes they're angry about something that happened at recess, or they are maybe just still feeling very hyper and wild, and they just need to calm their bodies. So we just take 10 minutes to still our bodies, and we have strategies that they use to calm their bodies, such as deep breathing. I'm looking around, I'm seeing some kids using their getting in the green strategies, putting their heads down, taking some big deep belly breaths to calm their bodies down. I play a video that kind of guides them through that, and they also have a journal where they can write what they're feeling, getting to a point where the room just feels settled, and then I know that they're ready to start learning. In about 30 seconds, we're going to put our mood meter journals away and come to the carpet. It's a good strategy because if they are not feeling settled, they won't be able to engage with the lesson. They won't be mindful of what's happening during the lesson. And it's also just a life skill that we need to learn to prepare ourselves and be ready for the task that's at hand. And in this case, the task was math.
So this is our third, what does success look like? And Kelly, this is aligned with Danielson as well, right? This video is aligned?
Yes. So I think there's a lot of developing my brain went dead, sorry. Creating an environment of respect and rapport, that's 2A. And then there's a lot of 2C in there, which is like rituals and routines. And that's something that I work a lot. A lot of the new teachers that I support struggle with those two domains, and especially with we're implementing a lot of social emotional learning and restorative practices in Pittsburgh Public Schools. And so what I love about this video is that it gives what that would look like in practice. So you talked about like closing the coaching loop, right? So a lot of the times I'll hear from teachers, well, I have this Wayfinder curricula and I'm trying to implement it, but how do I do that when I teach? I have to teach my content area. And I loved what the teacher said at the end. She's like, okay, well, now we can get going with what I actually teach, which is math. And sometimes it's just about a quick 5-minute thing that teachers need to see that in practice so that they understand that, like, look, this doesn't have to take an entire 30 minutes. I also loved what Amanda was talking about on the prior slide too, is that if you do want to take something like a mood meter and you want to try it out in your classroom, it gives you an opportunity to record yourself trying it and then uploading it. And then you can juxtapose it next to the exemplar so you can see where you are.
Yeah. It's, I strongly believe that being able to use video to close the coaching loop and being able to timestamp and annotate video, and then using that in a supportive induction program with a mentor or a coach that is in that same frame of thinking could be what helps us retain new teachers. I feel very strongly about that, and research supports as such as well. Okay, we are going to slowly but surely wrap it up here. Kelly, could you share maybe your biggest or most important lesson learned about using video with new teachers?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest lesson learned, and we sort of already alluded to that with the comment in the chat around Jim Knight. I'm a big Jim Knight disciple here. And if you're familiar with his impact cycle, I think it's about teachers choosing what they want to focus on. And that's what makes video so great. It's not a top-down approach. as Jim Knight would say, it's an inside out approach, right? So as a teacher, I'm saying, this is what I want to work on. I'm finding the video and the strategies that match that. And then I'm finding either a live person who can come in and give me feedback on how I implement it, or I can work on it and, actually just do it asynchronously. So to me, I think that's the big lesson learned. When I first started out in this work, I thought it was my job to go in and tell new teachers, give them the feedback and tell them what they needed to do. And what I have been leaning into as I've gotten more years behind me as a coach is that it definitely is better to start with what the teacher wants to work on rather than what I think they should work on.
Well, yeah, that's great advice. How about you, Amanda? What's one thing maybe that instructional leaders could take away from today's session and try tomorrow?
Yeah, Kelly and I are always pretty in sync, and you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. Is, like thinking realistically about the time of year. Things are winding down. Hopefully state testing, things like that are winding down. I think a lot of times we have really good strategies that we use with students, but we forget that they also work with adults. So I'm thinking of little things like temperature checks. I would encourage you to spend 5 minutes tomorrow having a conversation with a new teacher or a veteran teacher. Not even about work, just a friendly conversation, checking in, what are your summer plans, things like that. I think we've talked so much about the trust that is needed in education, and you have to feel trusted, you have to be valued, and I think it starts with the relationship building. I think the other thing, to piggyback off of Kelly, is giving choice. So as the year is winding down and maybe you have a first year teacher that's looking forward to start planning their content for going into their second year of teaching, asking them, not telling them, hey, this is the book I want you to read for your summer reading. Maybe they have 10 books written down in their notebook that they want to share with their peers that they work with. So putting some of the power back into, we know they're new teachers, but they also bring a lot of great wealth, and like Keely said, like, I'm not getting any younger over here. So I think our new teachers have so much valuable insight that can sometimes be overlooked simply because they're new and they're overwhelmed, and they just don't always have the space to express, what they need and what they want to feel successful.
Yeah, great advice. I love that. Just the ownership of them owning their professional learning and them knowing what it is they have strengths in and what they want to and need to continue to work on. That's very powerful. My call to action for you today is to start, but start small. And what I mean by that is start with watching video with your new teachers, and then slowly, and I think Amanda alluded to this at the beginning, the walk, jog, run analogy. And so, walking is watching a video. So whether you do it in your induction meeting or in a one-on-one with one of the new teachers, try some of these teaching channel videos, or Edutopia also has great videos. Pull some of those up and just watch the video together, pause it, have conversation back and forth, encourage the teacher to apply some of what they've learned in the video. But just start with watching. Just start small, and then eventually it becomes more natural for them to think about recording themselves and self-reflecting or sharing with peers and coaches. So if you do it this way, you will build trust. And as we know, that's one of the key factors in retaining our new teachers is that support, especially in times of disillusionment. So that is true. Ooh, here's a good one. How much time should new teachers spend receiving support? Do either of you have any thoughts on that one?
I'll let you take that, Kelly.
I think it depends on the teacher. And we talked about that at the beginning, like in our program, I do a differentiated pathways. So I have a lot of teachers now coming in who already have a lot of teaching experience when they come into our district. So obviously they don't need to spend as much time with getting support as, say, someone who's maybe fresh out of college. But even some of the folks who come fresh out of college, university, some of them step in just like our students. They're not all in different places. And so I think that's part of the art of coaching is really trying to figure out what do the teachers need? Who needs what? I usually try to tier the teachers at the beginning of the year, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and really I focus most of my coaching attention on the tier 3 teachers. Those are the ones that need to go through the coaching cycles. But just
Right.
like in a classroom, the majority, 70-80% of teachers will be able to manage on their own with minimal support, as long as they're coming to professional learning sessions and watching video coaching and things like that.
Right. Here's a good one, Amanda, for you. It says, what's the best way to help teachers feel like being videoed is not a gotcha if they don't have a strong relationship with their observer?
That's a great question and a tough question, because I think it all starts with the relationship first. But again, we know, you're not always going to have an observer that you connect well with. I think somebody had put in the chat, allowing space for the teacher to film themselves first and not having it a requirement that it has to be shared with anyone. Like, I know me personally, I hate to hear my voice. It can be very uncomfortable to be on video. So having that space where, hey, I'm going to, for the first month, I want you to just video certain moments of your lesson, certain moments of your classroom. Watch it back to yourself, jot down some notes, just getting them comfortable. I think that's the biggest hurdle, is getting people comfortable with seeing themselves on film, having to rewatch yourself and your mannerisms, and
Yeah.
then get into this space. Let them choose the first video that they want to share with you. I think
Right.
the I gotcha comes into play if the very first time you film them, it's for their first observation of the year, and they know it's going in their file, and they know that that's going to be the basis that they work off of all year. I'm a pretty, confident person, but I would be terrified in that environment.
For
So
sure.
again, yeah, I think just giving them the space to experiment with video on their own first,
Mm-hmm.
before you put them in a space where, you're sharing and they're putting themselves out there to others.
Thank you. There are a couple questions in the chat about are there resources for secondary levels? And there are resources in the video library, the teaching channel video library. So I just do want you to know that you can filter by grade as well as specific subjects. So yes, there are resources for secondary levels. And then just one final question. This is maybe a good one to end on, and I'd love actually to hear from both of you on this one. The question says, has anyone used video to also build capacity in veteran teachers to get out of the "I've always done it this way" rut?
Kelly, you want to start?
Sure. So for those of you that were on at the beginning, you heard me mention that we do our I also do training for our mentors in the district. Here in Pittsburgh Public Schools, they're called instructional teacher leaders, and that's short for ITLs. And we actually use video coaching with our ITLs as well. And it's, for many of them, we say, like, look, you can't get new teachers to do this unless it's something that you're willing to step in the space and do yourself. We've also been using a lot of video coaching in our content focus sessions, because we've got new curricula that's being implemented across ELA, math, social studies. And so we've been putting together a collection of exemplar videos of, like, what does it look like to go through this practice, and showing teachers step by step how to implement it. So I think that it's about the purpose.
All right. That was a great spot to end, I think. Amanda, what about you? Any thoughts on that last question?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, I very much understand that question, because as a veteran teacher, you're like, I know what I'm doing, kind of leave me alone. But I think just setting the space that, we're all learners, and we know the landscape of education right now, it's never going to stop changing. So while you might have been teaching for 20 years, this curriculum's brand new. So I would always, want to highlight the excellent things that veteran teacher does. Maybe they're pushing into a new teacher's classroom and helping them with their classroom management, or their relationship building with parents, but allowing that space to help veteran teachers understand, hey, you're a veteran in 9 out of 10 of these areas, but we just adopted this curriculum this year, so this is going to be on our priority map. This is the space that we're going to work to grow in this year. So I think,
Right.
kind of going, I feel like such a teacher, like the grows and the glows. Like, you're a veteran, you're glowing, we need you and we rely on you. But
Yeah.
nobody's an expert in education these days,
Right. Yeah, and the other thing I've seen that's powerful is, to your point, letting the individual choose the video that they're uploading and that they're going to watch together, and then watch it with that veteran teacher, and maybe watch it a couple times and see what they say about it. Maybe don't even be the first one to speak. But maybe, that teacher, that veteran teacher will be like, whoa, I didn't know I even did that, or I didn't know that I never left the front of the room, or whatever it
Mhm.
might be. So I do think if we soft kind of roll it, start slow, that we can get there with both veteran teachers and new educators as well. So, and the new educators can be great role models for veteran teachers as well. I mean, they have some great instructional technology skills that some of us may not have at this point.
Yeah, and I
Well,
also
I
know.
do. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to add, what's happening across the country is, sometimes they are new teachers that are being thrown into the role of a mentor or of a coach, just due to staffing needs. And so you might have the title instructional coach, but you still might feel new yourself. So we do see that a lot with just our coaching videos that we have, coaching conversation videos, where
Mhm.
there's one where it's a first year teacher and then their mentor, but their mentor is a fourth year teacher. And so I don't think there's that huge gap anymore where it's like your coach is a veteran, a 20-year teacher
Yeah.
working with a first year teacher.
Well, as we close, I just want to take a moment to thank both of you wholeheartedly. I was so grateful when you both were able to join this video or this webinar. I call it a video because it's video. It's all about video. So thanks again, Kelly and Amanda. Truly appreciate your perspective. And thanks to all of you who joined us today as well. We're so glad that you spent time, for you to learn something new and to hear about something new as well. And we hope that you're walking away with some practical strategies and maybe some ideas, some new inspiration for what induction might look like in the year to come. Until then, thanks again for being here, and we look forward to continuing the conversation about video with new teachers. Thanks, everybody.